And then I'll be like, okay. Now, Kieran, do you want to help me chop off this guy's hand?
But
Get
why?
the bone saw.
I told you
Actually-
I had ways of communicating with this person.
All right, fine.
They're not very nice.
You remove the
They
hand.
sure do make me feel better, and like,
How are you feeling, Spellbore?
a brisk run through New Throne really, weirdly better, actually.
Oh, good.
Okay.
So we have hand.
Okay. Yep.
Yeah, I just spend time at night cutting off the hand.
Okay, no problem. All right, panning over to the other two, trekking through the woods. Reich, you're gonna have to do a survival roll, but don't worry, Bellum's going to assist you to give you advantage.
Nice. Let's do
Come on,
this.
Reich. Don't Reich it up.
To the right skew.
Ugh. All right.
Hey!
It's pretty solid. So actually,
Pretty
you
good.
don't have a hard time with his, like, every once in a while with his guidance, like, so the way it works is, as you're walking along, you're like, oh, this seems familiar. I think from here we went over this way. And, like, and then Bella would be like, you sure you didn't go this way? And, like, point at the fact that you're about to step into, like, a deep, like, well of, like, muck. And you're like, actually, this way does look better. And, like, as you're, like, kind of making your way around the buck, you realize, like, once again, sights and whatnot that kind of catch your eye. I mean, it's a swamp. There's so much of it just kind of, like, blends together that there aren't really many identifying features to help. It's like every once in a while, you're like, that knot on that tree looks familiar, but you kind of like using Bellum's instincts. But then you'll be like, no, this place seems extremely familiar. Let me go check over here. And you like kind of like check around for like another 2 or 3 minutes and be like, this is a spot where we fought a couple of those creatures. And that's kind of like how you're feeling your way around and whatnot. Eventually you come to an area where you can see a whole bunch of trees are cracked and blasted, as though like something forceful has like injured them and broken them and everything. And you can see a divot in the ground that is slowly starting to fill up with mud. And it's clearly where Kieran had teleported from before. And so like, I know where this is. The tree that the druids are in is actually like right over there.
I point to the tree and I say, there's a door inside that tree. They are below.
I just nod. I go over to the tree and investigate for a door.
Roll me an investigation.
Use your investigate.
Okay.
It's super effective.
Most people would not be able to succeed with that low of a roll. However, you are. You are able to succeed. The DC is lower for you. You notice the latch.
I go to open it.
And you do.
I walk in.
Okay.
I motion for Reich to follow.
Okay.
I'll
As you
follow
go,
with that.
as you go to walk in, that's when you a spear like hits the side of the tree right above your head, catching your attention. And you guys like whip around to look and see what's behind you, and you see that there's 3 orcs. Because remember, they weren't half orcs. 3 orcs in like the druidic garb and whatnot, making their way towards you, very feral-like, very slowly. As they're slowly making their way towards you, one of them like leans forward into like places his hand into a bit of muck in the ground and kind of like leans into it, like he's, I don't know, maybe he's about to like dive it, like push his head and dive into it. Maybe he's about to take a drink from it. You're not quite sure until as he leans lower and lower than you expected and his leg stretches out further and further behind him, he like almost in the blink of an eye very quickly transforms into a gator and moves his way very quickly across the water of muck that's over there.
I drop my knee to the ground,
Mm-hmm.
and I just say, "Brothers."
So you do that.
I would say in Orcish.
Yep, the gators continues like making its way around and get into an advantageous position. The other two kind of come to a stop and look at each other for a moment, and then that one of them walks forward and he says to you in Orcish, he's like, he says to you like a greeting in your what are the hell they called again? Sorry, the gatekeepers. He says to you a greeting in like a gatekeeper kind of greeting that has a triggered response. And as he says it to you, and you immediately respond it back to him, he says, "Brother from far lands,
I nod to that. Yes.
what brings your trek all the way here?"
I was sent here to finish a task.
A task, and he looks to Reich.
No, he just happens to have brought me to where you guys are. I've been looking for you, unable to find you.
Your task is...
That's what I've come to find out.
You don't know what your task is?
He,
Worst task ever.
yeah, he like looks up and down. He's like, well, I was sent here to find you to find out what my task is.
Perhaps you're speaking to the wrong one then. Let's go in. And he leads his way into the into the tunnel with you. One of them will walk ahead of you, one will walk behind you guys, and the gator stays in the water, and like the muddy part of water.
He would just walk in motion for Reich to follow, like
Damn
seemingly
gators.
safe.
Reich knows
Reich
this
would-
tunnel.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Reich would just shrug and just follow after him.
You go into the
No
tunnel,
fear.
and once you get across the inside of the tunnel, you understand the way that this works, even though you've never seen this in particular place. There's a certain way that if you jump down, you don't have to worry about like hurting yourself. It's like the air in here will slow down your fall and allow you to land comfortably where onto the ground below. And so you do that. You kind of like step out, opening your mind, and it lowers you down to the ground. From where that ledge was. So you lower down to the ground where the ledge was, and you see standing before the big stone wheel that we were talking about beforehand, with like the big parts come across it. It has a bit of glowing coming to it. Standing over a part with his hands pressed over it, you see a tall and well-built but not like super buff form. You instantly know what this creature is, even though you yourself have never encountered one beforehand. You've just seen drawings of them, and you've heard of them, and so on and so forth. So he's standing with his hands over a portion of the wheel, and he seems to be concentrating heavily. Do you interrupt, or do you stay and watch?
I stay and watch.
You must patiently watch for 10 minutes as he continues to have his hands over the wheel, until finally he kind of like takes his hands off, he lets up off of it, and backs away. It's only then that you see that there's a fissure in the wheel that was underneath his hands, and that there's like a green light pouring from inside of it. He turns to regard you. He looks over you for a few moments, just trying to like kind of take you in. And as he looks at you, you can see kind of like he concentrates for several moments, and then as he exhales, he seems to like come to more knowing and says to you in Orcish, "You have traveled far to get here.
I nod and I'm just like, yes.
You have come on a task, on a pilgrimage."
I just nod again, this time not saying anything.
"The pilgrimage that you've come for, you've known what it was, even if you didn't understand it. You've come to learn the signs that can ward them.
Absolutely.
It is cracked."
He like looks over at the fissure and then like looks back. Yes, it is.
"The wards are what stop it from bursting. Have you seen cracks before?"
He actually shakes his head. He's like, no, I haven't.
Then perhaps it's worse. Perhaps one has already burst, and they need protections lest another one does so. This crack happened only 2 days ago.
He's gonna like take a second to think, and the second probably turns into just like 30 seconds, and he's like, well, there was a beholder 2 days ago in the woods.
When the crack formed, there was a burst of energy. The burst caused a fissure to a place that cannot be reached.
He just nods to that.
The rest of them were dealt with. I've seen the arrows. I imagine you were the one that handled the bulk.
I nod to that as well, like kind of like patting my bow.
I will give you the instruction for... I will give you the instruction for the sigil, for the signs, to keep the wards up, to keep the seals sealed, until we find a better means to do this, until we learn how to fix these fissures.
He nods to that and says, I'm very appreciative. I'm here for other reasons as well.
I sense that. Trepidation. You came here a long voyage for this, but now that's not even an inkling in your mind. A duty, certainly, but not what you're thinking of.
He turns to Reich, assuming that Reich has probably understood this, not necessarily that he did, obviously, but he assumed that Reich understood, and he looks at Reich first knowingly, and then I'm assuming there's some type of puzzled look on Reich's face, what's going on here? Or
Nope,
is he
I just look. I very stoically just kind of watch the scene, more dispassionate than stoic.
Right. So so I look back at him and I speak in common this time, and I just say, it seems as though these people have lost their way. They have led me to you. For that, I at least owe them.
What is it that... And so he's switching to common. He thinks for a few moments and switching to common and turning to Reich. What is it that's led you to me again?
I say, he asked for the way.
Is that it? Is that the only reason that you've come?
You gave me... You opened in my mind new powers. Something I never anticipated. And while I'd be remiss if I didn't exclaim that perhaps allowing you to into my mind in such a manner made me uncomfortable. What it resulted is intriguing, to say the least. If this is something you implanted inside me, then I wish to know. If this is something you awoke inside me, then I wish to learn.
There was nothing planted. It was always there. It just needed to be switched. But you didn't come here for a thank you. You only came here as a guide then. So then what is it that's in your mind, Bellum? What are you thinking of?
He says, he looks over at Reich, kind of puzzled, and then back at, and he says, it seems as though the rest of his party couldn't join us. They said it wasn't safe. And he looks at Reich again.
It's the woman. The woman's mind is so broken. It's so chaotic. It is. It's madness. Understands this, Bellum. You're young, and I can smell the city on you. You're new to these ways, and so there are many things that you must learn. These seals, these locks, they've been here for aeons, and because of that, the magic's behind them, the magic's before them. They've altered them in a way, altering, being what they do best. They have a mind of their own, even if they're not alive, and they do what they can to grab on to the minds of others. This one took a liking to the madness in the friend they call Kieran. If that madness grows, it gains power. Honestly, in my opinion, simply killing her would be a way of resolving it. Sure, if she saw the knife coming, there'd be a split moment of madness, greatly enhanced as she feels the betrayal, and that would cause damage, but it would also end any further damage, which would then lead me to believing that the best way, he switched to Orcish for this, by the way, right? Because, you know,
I was about
yeah,
to say.
yeah. So which would lead me to the belief that the best way would be to do it while she's sleeping. Poison in her sleep. She need never know that it happens. But then there's a problem with that. She doesn't remember who I am or what this place is, because she chose to forget, knowing that her knowing was causing great harm. She came before us and offered her mind, not even understanding what that meant. That is a heroic deed. Someone that chooses to make a sacrifice like that cannot be slaughtered like cattle. Someone like that cannot be shown the disrespect of death in their sleep or a betrayal. Which is why I've chosen to do that. As I said, this seal is linked to her mind, and as her madness grows, its power is gained. But also, her madness, it wasn't there at the start. She wasn't born mad. Something happened. Something within her snapped to make her the way that she is. If she resolves whatever that is, whatever caused this madness, the repairing her mind would also weaken the seal, would cure some of the madness within the seal itself. And while it's a gamble, I will take my chances, because she generally travels with Reich. And Reich, and of course you can understand your own name, you hear it being said.
Oh, that's me.
Yeah. He says, and Reich is someone equally dedicated as she is, but with focus, with precision. He can help ground her to some degree, and hopefully help to mend her mind.
I'll nod to that and say, while Reich might be capable of grounding her, you think that I should help resolve her madness?
Do I think you should help resolve her madness? The only thing that will do that is resolving whatever it is that caused it. Some great pain or some great betrayal that has happened in her life. That's what I'm assuming, because betrayal is what I sensed would trigger her to have even greater madness. So, would you like to travel along with her to ease her mind? You could guide it, or if you see things slipping, you can end it. That's a task of a gatekeeper, to make the decision to save those that don't even know they're being protected, that don't even know they're in harm's way.
I nod to it and say, that'll be a tougher decision than I've ever had to make in the past. However, I do accept it. I accept that as my duty.
Is that all that was on your mind coming here?
He takes a deep breath and looks back and says, there's been plenty on my mind. I have many questions, if you have the time.
I have answers. I have time. A bit tired from the work that I've done, but standing does not take effort.
He acknowledges that with a nod and says, well, one of the more pressing matters is, and he turns to Common and actually looks over at Reich. He says, describe those, I think you called them moundlings.
They've seen them.
Are you referring, with this word, to the creatures that we briefly discussed before?
He nods.
Indeed.
Oh, it's funny that Bellum nods because he wasn't there.
I'm just accepting the whole conversation.
Yeah.
So,
So, you've encountered more of these things, the creepers?
one of the townsfolk, the one who initially sent us into the woods, he betrayed us. He gave us gems, of explosive nature, attempted to assassinate us with them. He was unsuccessful initially, though one of our party did fall to the beholder. Killed by Kieran.
I'm sorry to hear for your loss. However, he died doing a greater deed than you might know. Had that beholder made its way to a city, many more deaths would have happened. Many more, if not the entire city, and then moved on to the next. It was calling behind it more reinforcements. The first round Bellum had taken care of. Had the beholder not been ended, he probably could have called more to it.
Well, then, at least I can know that Luca would have done so happily again, if called on it. He was a good man, but that is neither here nor there. These creatures, it appears that they have the ability to take control of a human or any mortal creature. We don't know the extent of the power yet.
One moment. When you had discussed that you had been betrayed by somebody that sent you into the woods, I honestly didn't care. The goings-ons in the cities is not my problem. Are you suggesting that he's one of these things?
We're fairly certain. We had our caster as the one you met last time, and for all of his faults,
The disgusting creature that smelt of death.
For all his faults, he is a
My
brilliant.
character starts nodding.
He is a brilliant physician, and we are fairly certain that the creature that I would say the creature was in in the middle of a transformation into one of the pure moundlings. There was another man we found in the forest shortly after our first meeting with you, and just before I came here with Kieran. He was either in disguise or partway through a transformation into one of the creatures and inevitably transformed and assaulted us.
How do you know there's a transformation happening? What evidence do you have?
His skin was green tinted.
This is different. The transformations that bring them from the flesh that they were to the creatures commonly known as creepers, that transformation takes less than a day. It is very quick, and it starts with dehydrating them of all of their liquids. It's like, I got a lot. I was like, dehydrating them of all of their hydration. Sorry.
Nailed it.
Of all, dehydrating them completely. But what you're referring to is something different, and something I didn't realize was already happening. That means it's already expanding its realm. That means it is definitively awake. When it's awake, it is more powerful, but it's also more vulnerable. This is something entirely different. Have you encountered any more of these people with green flesh? Any more than just the one that you killed?
Our current theory is that the captain of the guard and potentially more people in the town were infected. We were attacked pretty uncharacteristically when we entered the town. At first we thought nothing of it, because the reason we came back into town is that we were framed for a crime by the creature we just recently killed. But the townsfolk were all too willing to assault us upon first sight, and it seemed out of character. But that might be me looking into it too much. But we have good evidence to prove that the captain of the guard has been infected. She was working in cahoots with this man.
There is a way to cure them so that they don't need to be that way forever. There's a way to cure these sad creatures. The first way is to kill the creature that controls them before it's too late for them. They will live for many years in this state, controlled by it. If you kill the creature, they can once again return to what they were. Another means is to remove them from it, to take it long outside the range for which it has manipulation over them. And in time, they'll be able to wrestle themselves free of its control. And they can live relatively normal lives, even if the parasite continues to spread, and it will eventually lead to their death. But then there's something else, too. Because, generally speaking, I don't care about saving them. They spread the purpose of this creature that I'm referring to. This creature that came from the other side of the gates that I protect. Generally, we just kill them and have it done. But occasionally you need information. Information and only something linked to the creature would know. There's a means to wrestle them free from its grasp, even if temporarily. It only generally works with those of a stronger will. Perhaps a caster, or someone strong-minded. If you have somebody that you know like that is alive, perhaps it'll work for them. Weaker-minded people, those that tend to rely more on physical aspects, physical training, and he actually understands that he's talking to Reich, but Reich also understands that what kind of stuff that Reich does is very different from other people. You know what I mean? They are less likely for this to work well. If you get them ill, very ill, death's doorstep kind of ill, it usually can break their mind free, even if temporarily, so you can get the answers you want. There's a sickness commonly known as the flu, a particular virulent strain of that can do this. There are other ways too.
So, are you suggesting that the population, whatever percentage is infected, is beyond the hope of permanent salvation? Even with the destruction of this creature, they will never be fully returned to their faculties.
If the creature is killed, they will be entirely themselves again. If the creature is not killed, and it's simply have them those that are affected, what do I call them? I'm so sorry.
Creepers.
No, thralls. To have the thralls removed enough that they can wrestle their minds free. They'll be mostly themselves again.
My character's gonna interrupt and say, "What do you call this creature that we should kill?"
It's known as the Thorian.
Thorian. Is it easily tracked?
The one that has existed in this forest has been here for thousands of years, and nobody has found it yet.
Well, I haven't tried yet.
Well, if there is a chance, even a remote chance, even a chance so remote that it seems nearly impossible that we can find this creature and kill it and save these people, then that is what me and my companions will do.
I do not doubt that others have found it before. Unfortunately, the deeper and deeper within the rings of the realm that it controls, the more and more creepers there are. Overwhelming numbers of them. Numbers that easily swell up. Even when it rests, it can swell those numbers. It's just, I'm trying to understand the end game here. It took the mind of somebody that was sending you to come into the woods, which means you were either to become a creeper yourself or to become a thrall, whichever it deemed you better suited for. And then you would serve your purpose there. But it also took the captain of the guard. That means it plans to do more. It would not surprise me if its attempt would be to take over at least one of the cities, if not both of them, during this waking phase. When they awake for a year, 2 at most, before they rest for another 1,000. This one has
And during
clearly
the-
been awake for at least 6 months, if it already has thralls embedded in societies.
And during the year, what do they seek to accomplish?
Expanding its realm. That's the only other understanding that we can gather.
When they go dormant, what happens to the thrall?
They continue to serve its will, spreading its realm, setting things up for the next time that it'll wake. It is because of this constant control it has over the thrall, the constant manipulation until they eventually burn out, that these creatures seem to prefer elves. They prefer creatures that are long-lived, because they can serve their purpose long after the Thorian falls into its rest.
My character's going to turn to Reich and say, this thing seems to have deep roots in the city. How important is it to you and to Kieran that the city go back to the way it was?
If there's any chance at all that we can save these people, then I would have that be. Then I would have that happen. But before I make a decision, this is something this important. We need to speak to my party, because if this is something that we decide to do, if we seek out this Thorian, it will take every bit of strength that we have to do so. If we decide it better to contain it, it's not a decision I can make alone.
I nod to that.
There's another option.
He looks over,
And that
raises
is,
an eyebrow.
Do nothing.
would that not allow its creeping influence to continue further? Would that not jeopardize what you were doing here?
Not exactly. It was created by the creatures of madness that exist on the other side, but this itself is not a creature of madness. It is not like them, just made by them. It will not directly oppose me or mine or our tasks. It'll just run its own course, and we can run parallel to it without having to intersect, aside from minor skirmishes here and there. However, the people in the city will always intersect. They don't understand the significance of this. They don't understand that when they interfere with us, greatly cause such great harm they could bring about the end of days to all their kind. If the Thorian were to take over the entire woods again and make them quiet again, as they were a few hundred years ago, then I think even greater safety would happen.
It sounds as though you'd prefer it.
I'm here to protect these people, but I'm here to protect them from madness, not plants.
He nods to that very understandingly.
Well, I'll inform you that that third option is not an option at all. When it comes to the crossroads between inaction and action, action will always be the course. I'm not a man to sit around and allow people to die simply because I'm too afraid to face something evil. If there is not to be a move against the Thorian, we will contain its spread, if for no other reason than to protect the people of this realm.
My character will turn back to the gatekeeper and say, at the very least, I guess it's good practice, no? With like a half smile on his face.
You will do what you feel necessary, but please do not conflate choosing not to oppose the Thorian spread with inaction.
Understood.
I say nothing to that. I say, unless you have any further questions, I feel as though something of this importance should take top priority. Are you ready to go? Looking to Bellum.
Yep. Turns back to Reich and says, I am. However, you must be willing to convince Kieran. She didn't seem as though she wanted to come into these woods. She seemed willing, but not like she wanted to.
You do not know Kieran like I do. When we tell her that that these people are in danger, I think you'll be very surprised at how quickly she rises to the occasion.
I nod to that. Yeah, that's sure.
And with that, we got a break. Oh, with that, we got a break. We'll see everybody in about 5 minutes. Oh, rise to the occasion.